against Oregon, he said in the Hawkeye Radio postgame show with Gary Dolphin that was what made him so successful against the Ducks, was that he was seeing what Oregon was presenting and he was taking it without much second thought. And it worked really, really well, and it's why he's been so impressive. And it certainly does not help that there were a number of NBA scouts that were in attendance in Eugene last night as well.
Yeah, and I thought certainly Sturts had a good game against USC, but a much better game against Oregon. And as a team, it was more of a bounce back. So let's take you back in time. It felt like 2-3 weeks ago, but it was really less than a week ago, where USC comes into Iowa City, and Iowa beats them 73-72 on kind of an Easter miracle where they get fouled with under 5 seconds to go. Cam Woods for USC had 33 points. General takeaways from this game is Iowa has to come back on, I think, 2 different occasions and get a little lucky at the end.
Well, I think one of the things that really stood out, and this is something that you could see the immediate improvement from the game against the Trojans to the game against the Ducks, was the fact that, even Ben McCollum said it, they did not stop. The offense did not have any sort of stalling point in that second half against Oregon, whereas they really struggled for about 5-6 minutes against the Trojans, and that allowed them to overcome the Iowa deficit that Iowa had created at the beginning of the second half. And then all of a sudden it became a game of just a complete nail biter, where they did have to end up relying on Sturts, which Iowa's done before. They'll continue to do it as needed, but in a way that you kind of got a little lucky, where, USC fouled when it didn't look like they were trying to, when you send, your top player to the charity stripe.
If that's a game Iowa is supposed to lose and yet they end up winning it, I mean, that's something you certainly take if you're an Iowa fan. I wanted to go next in our rundown to talking about Alvaro Fulgaris, who I thought had a really good game, especially offensively against Oregon. Finished with 15 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists. Early on, his offense was huge. His two-man game with Bennett Sturts is really impressive to me. He was kind of key in Iowa getting up on Oregon in that run, and you can see him step back and shoot the 3, but he's more versatile than just a pick and pop big. He could also get to the rim pretty well.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that McCollum has been so impressed with about, especially over these last couple weeks. We saw flashes of it a little bit during non-conference play. We're starting to see him step up in some bigger moments now too, but he's getting comfortable in this system. This is the kind of player that Iowa needed. This is the player that they were looking for when they brought Fulgaris into this lineup, and I think that he does a really good job being that versatile kind of key figure, where he can play and be aggressive in the paint, not really foul too much, but also get that step back shot, get that big 3, and the confidence from that 3-point line is growing, and it worked really, really well. So now he has to carry it over.
Coach McCollum often talks about making winning plays, and it's not something you it's not something you always see on the box score. It's just winning plays, and I've seen it more and more out of Fulgaris, and he was a really good Robin, so to speak, to Sturts' Batman, whereas Tavion Banks has often been that guy. Yeah, his two-man game, it's exactly what probably McCollum and likely Iowa fans were envisioning, is just the way he's able to play with Sturts, because both of them can step back and shoot the 3. Both of them can get to the basket, and both of them are such good passers.
Well, and I think that's why it works so nicely, because the beginning of the year, one of the things that McCollum had talked about so much was the fact that Iowa needed to find ways to score without always relying on Sturts. Will they still rely on Sturts quite a bit? Absolutely. That's not going to change. He's their leading point scorer for a reason. What changes now is that they have the ability to pass off the ball. If teams try to double team, they really try to make things difficult for Sturts. They have the ability to rely on a Tavion Banks, to rely on an Alvaro Fulgaris, a Tate Sage in some occasions, other players in that lineup that can fill those gaps every so often. Fulgaris and Banks really kind of nailing that two-man game with Sturts, but I mean, you're starting to see so many other options for Iowa now.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily sure they will work together as a trio, but if you can get Banks, Fulgaris, and Sturts all on the same page, all in the 15 to 20 point range, this is a really, really dangerous team.
I would agree. I think if you can aim for that, that is, you got to expect all three of them shooting the ball really well at the same time. Sometimes a little bit of luck comes into that. Some days you have it, some days you don't. But I would agree. If you can get them all in double figures, maybe not even that 15 point, get them to 10, get them to 11, 12, somewhere in that range, then you're looking at a really confident offense offense, and that's going to translate really well on defense too.
So I do want to move on to Tavion Banks, and he's had an up and down last week. A great game against USC where he scores 20 points, pulls down 7 rebounds, and goes 8 for 8 from the charity stripe, but only plays 11 minutes against Oregon. Ben McCollum told our friends from the Des Moines Register that Banks is dealing with something physically, but didn't really expound on that much, but hopes to have Banks back. Honestly, it made me think 11 minutes, you only get 11 minutes from Banks, but you still win pretty big against Oregon. It actually brings us to an audience question where Eugene asks, he saw some starters, like Banks, not playing much in the second half. I think Banks scored only 3, or played only 3 minutes in the second half. So I guess my question with Banks is, how important is his presence? Because I'm not sure Iowa can win many games. They can win at Oregon without Banks playing a lot, but I'm not sure they can win many more than that.
He's definitely a key part of this team, and I think that's why him not playing as much as he normally does against Oregon because of that undisclosed injury was kind of a big deal, even though Iowa did so well without him. I think that you had moments where you could see other players step up. I was really impressed with Cooper Koch and Brendan Hawson, who saw some significant minutes as well against Oregon. I thought he did great in that game as well. But when you have a player like that where he's able to just make it happen, I think we're up to 3 out of the last 4 games, at least in Carver Hawkeye Arena, Tavion Banks has gone flying to save a ball, whether it be to avoid it from going out of bounds, or that's just the type of player he is, and that's not something you can replicate as easily. And I think that's why he's a key part of it. McCollum also didn't really give much information in terms of how long Banks could be out. It could be nothing. He could play during the 10 p.m. game on Wednesday night, or he could be out for a week or so. We'll have to see, but he's definitely a key part of this roster.
And I mentioned the free throws before. He didn't hit a free throw, didn't attempt a free throw against Oregon, and now that record of 30 straight free throws extends to perhaps one more game. This is a record that, as you know, means a ton in Iowa lore. Chris Street holds the record for consecutive free throws made. Back in 2018, Jordan Bohannon had tied that record, but decided to miss a free throw short. Basically say this Street video, or this Street record is not exactly, it's not for me. Why don't we show you some Street video, because Madison, whether or not Tavion Banks gets this record, I think it's very, I can't think of the word, but it just kind of makes sense that it's Banks, because don't you think Banks plays in a very similar way to Street? He just plays with heart, plays with effort and drive and unselfishness.
Absolutely, and I think that's why he's done so well in Iowa's system and why he's enjoyed playing for Iowa so much. When it does come down to that moment, if it does, I truly don't know with any sort of certainty if Banks is going to take that record or not. I have a feeling it honestly might come down to the scenario that they're presented with. It could be a situation where they need that free throw in the game, and it might come down to that. I don't know, and I think that that's going to be a really, really interesting element to this season. It's going to be another wrinkle that we're seeing develop in front of our eyes, but I have to agree. I feel like they do play with a little bit of similarity, even though the fact that they're such different people, they do still have some differences, but that heart, that passion, you can see how much fun Chris Street loved playing basketball, how much Tavion loves basketball. You can see it when they play on the court.
So it's possible that's a story. Does Tavion Banks get to the record? Does Tavion Banks tie the record? Does he intentionally miss the free throw? Eugene, I'm curious, this is for the room. Guys, I'm going to ask you. Let's say Tavion, you guys saw Chris Street play. I did not. Tavion Banks gets to, I think it's 34th straight. Let's clap if you want him to intentionally miss so he can share the record. Clap if you'd say, no, it's his record. Records are meant to be broken. I think we're half and
almost
half.
Even, yeah.
Okay, well, we'll have to find out. We might find out against Washington, ranks 47th in the net. Iowa's got to play at Washington at 10 p.m. Everybody grab your coffee. All right, we'll talk women's hoops coming up next. Thanks for joining us on Iowa Live. Audience participation.
There you go.
Welcome back to Pickle Palace. Welcome back to On Iowa Live. Jack Lido along with Madison Hricik of the Cedar Rapids Gazette. We talked men's basketball earlier. Now let's move on to women's basketball, who went 0-2 in their Southern California trip. I was not there. I'm a little jealous, but I guess I wouldn't want to play USC and UCLA. Those are two very good teams. Final scores there. UCLA 88, Iowa 65, and earlier USC 81, Iowa 69. Didn't hurt Iowa too much in the AP rankings. They're number 10, according to the voters. They're 12th in the net. Obviously, you're not necessarily expected to beat both those teams on the road. It's hard games, but still, you want to win them. You play to win the game. So, Madison, what exactly went wrong? You can talk individual games. You can talk as a whole. What do you think went wrong for the Hawks?
Well, I think if you look at it from a whole, there's two things that we can evaluate here. One, there was some lineup adjustments that needed to be made after Taylor McCabe's season-ending injury. That happened. As much as it hurt Iowa and Iowa fans to see someone like that end their season pretty short, the Hawkeyes had to adjust, and it is going to take some time. Iowa has been so consistent with its lineup throughout this season on the women's side that it is really difficult, especially when you go on the road into two really tough road environments. Like, these aren't easy environments to play a basketball game in at all, let alone the stakes that were involved in it too. So I think you have that element of it. And then you also, I kind of started touching on it a little bit, but I think that road environment too just makes it difficult. It's so hard to play on the road in the Big Ten. So difficult, especially when you have new pieces in play. I was making adjustments. There were some really positive things about this game that I really, really liked, especially Journey Houston. I am a big fan of how she's developed throughout this season. I think Ava Heiden's also played really well the last couple games as well. Individual performances, there's certainly positives, but that's a tough pill to swallow over 2 games.
It's almost like you read my rundown or something.
Let's
put a pin on that because Journey Houston played well. Turnovers I thought were the biggest problem just watching the game. 13 turnovers against USC, 19 against UCLA. The Trojans scored 19 points off those turnovers. UCLA scored 18 points, so it actually could have been a lot worse against the Bruins. And for the new, maybe old Big Ten fans who are now new Big Ten fans welcoming in those 2 Southern California schools. Maybe you knew the name Lauren Betts, but now you certainly know it. She's a problem at 6'7", potential top 2 or top 3 pick in the WNBA draft. But it's not just her. It's also Gianna Neepkins, Angela Dugalich had a career-high day. Kika Rice is going to play in the WNBA. So it just shows, like, this is the class of the Big Ten. And it is now. It started to be last year. No question about it now. UCLA is on kind of another level. And against USC, I think the final score doesn't really tell the whole story. I think the turnovers hurt. Iowa stuck with it mostly until late in the third quarter, but obviously a tough place to win. Cara Dunn had 25 for USC. Let's talk about those positives for a second. And I want to start with the bigs, Ava Heiden and Hannah Stolke. I'll pull up their I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Ava Heiden and Hannah Stolke. Let's pull those up. They combined for 32 points, 11 rebounds, facing up on Lauren Betts right there. And these are Associated Press photos, and I love pulling them up because no matter what Heiden and Stolke do in the rest of their life, they're going to maybe hang those up and say, hey, look, I play defense against a potential WNBA All-Star like Lauren Betts. Obviously, good things at points, but when you're up against 6'7", it's tough to be consistently great. And we saw it. Stolke was good in the first half, not so good in the second half. Kind of the opposite for Heiden.
I think one of the things that stood out to me, particularly with those two going against Lauren Betts in UCLA, was the fact that neither of them really showed any fear against her. I think that was something that I took away pretty quickly for both of them, is that neither of them were afraid to make things difficult for her. I mean, we can talk about how deep this potential Big Ten representation in the WNBA draft class could be, but for the fact that Ava Heiden and Hannah Stolke weren't afraid of that challenge, despite how difficult it may have been, I really was impressed with that, because you could see the effort was there. You could see the intentionality behind it. Did it always work out in their favor? No, but I loved the fact that they were willing to put up a fight, and I think that's what stood out to me the most.
Yeah, it's just take you back to Iowa facing South Carolina, and Stolke has to face up on Camila Cardoso, who's now playing for the Chicago Sky. Growth being made, but still, when you're 6'7", you're 6'7". There's only so much you can do. Speaking of tall, let's go on the complete opposite end to the shortest player on the floor, Chit Chat Wright, who in watching the game I think was one of my 2 or 3 biggest positives for Iowa. She's been such a big contributor all year, become a fan favorite at Carver Hawkeye Arena, had 8.7 rebounds, 8 assists, and just 1 turnover against USC. Then against UCLA, 10 points, 3 rebounds, and 7 assists with 2 turnovers. She's really making an impact, not just scoring the ball, stepping back and hitting the 3, but also controlling the offense. You know, assist numbers are good, but I think she has a lot of hockey assists too. What has impressed you most about Chit Chat Wright through the lens of those 2 West Coast games?
I think the biggest thing is just her IQ. Her vision is pristine. You can tell she knows how to play basketball and how to make everyone else on the floor around her also play smart basketball. And that's one of the best things you can do, is when you make your teammates look just as smart as you are, even if they actually are just as smart as you are. Let me preface that too. But I think that's one of the things that I love about Chit Chat Wright, is that she does such a good job of really finding ways to pick apart a defense at the right time. She's so good at finding that right bucket. And I think what Jan Jensen has done a phenomenal job with her is getting her to be confident in her shot. We've seen that develop so much throughout this year. She's not afraid to take a shot if it's there, and that wasn't something we had right at the beginning of the non-conference season. So I think the ability for her to grow and develop and find the upside in her game as quickly as she has, I mean, it's really, really impressive, the trajectory she's been on.
Yeah, Iowa's got 2 candidates for maybe most impressive or most improved player in the Big Ten, with Ava Hayden and Chit Chat Wright. Let's move on to Journey Houston, a freshman who had a career high 26 minutes against USC, 16 points there, 8 rebounds. She's really impressing me with the way she pulls down offensive rebounds. You see it all the time here at Carver. The stat I just wrote it down, 39 offensive rebounds in 322 minutes played. That's an offensive rebound about every 8 minutes, and that's actually, just for perspective, right on cue with Lauren Betts, who has 69 offensive rebounds in 569 minutes. So look, I'm not saying they're the same player, but when Journey Houston comes off the bench, it obviously provides something. It provides something for Iowa. What were you impressed about with Journey this past weekend?
I think one of the things that I really like is that because she's so young, there's so much raw talent available for Jan Jensen and this coaching staff to mold. And one of the things that consistently stands out every time she's on the court is how aware she is of where the ball is. Even if she's off ball, if she's guarding, if she's trying to play a little bit more of that defensive mindset, or if the ball's behind her because the shot's already been taken, she's ready to go. She's got her head on a swivel. I like that about her game. I think she does a really nice job of being mindful of where she is in perspective of where the ball is going, not necessarily where it just is.
We do have an audience question, and it's a good one from Eugene. Do the losses to UConn and UCLA tell us how far we've come or how far we have to go? And this is kind of a cop-out answer, but I think in a sense it kind of does both. But the question that popped into my mind after reading this one was, has Iowa kind of hit their ceiling? In a little apples to oranges way, the Iowa football team, maybe did they hit their ceiling at some point? You know, can they not quite compete with the Ohio States or the Indianas of the world? Are they a little bit, are they closer? Are they far away? So let me just ask you about that in regards to Iowa women's basketball. They're getting wins over a great team like Michigan State, a great team like Ohio State, but they get beat by 20 plus against UConn and UCLA.
Well, I think one of the things you have to remember is you have to put some of those games into context. UConn, neutral site. UCLA, road game. Michigan State, that was a Carver game. Oregon, also a Carver game. So I think the atmosphere certainly play into it. When I look at this particular question, I think of 2 things. Yes, I think there's a little bit of both, where UCLA, particularly UConn this year, is leaps and bounds impressively ahead of so many other programs across the country. But you're really starting to see these powerhouses almost isolate themselves in that top 3, maybe even 4 in the AP poll we're seeing consistently. You're not seeing a ton of movement there. And then you're seeing the rest of the top 25. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I just think that those programs, those top programs, are just so far ahead of the game right now in terms of the players that they've had and how they've developed, how they've gelled together. It's not necessarily to say Iowa will never reach that level. You never say never. You don't know what's going to happen in sports. That's one of the best parts about it, is the unpredictability. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's going to be easy either. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the duality where the both comes in when you answer that question, is that these programs are just a little bit further ahead right now, but it's not just ahead of Iowa, it's ahead of so many other schools.
Yeah, exactly. I always like to say with coaches and with teams, you can't win the big game until, of course, you can. We'll talk a little football next, coming up on Iowa Live. Back to Pickle Palace. Welcome back to On Iowa Live. Madison Hricik from the Gazette joining me this evening. Before we get into football, we have a lot to talk about with their schedule with the Iowa football beat reporter here. I do want to get to a fun question from Eugene. Which basketball, men's or women's, is the best interview? I presume you're talking about the players, although both coaches are pretty good interviews. I think if I had to pick one, a little biased here, but I really like talking to Hannah Stolke. And it's not just about she gives good answers. She's improved so much from her freshman season at Iowa, heck, from her senior season at Cedar Rapids, Washington, till now. She's able to play the camera in such a way where the quotes just work better if you're watching on television or you see it on social media. And she's also just such a nice person, and she's very respectful and honest with her answers. That's my question. So if any of the athletes you cover, your best interview?
Any of them? Okay. First off, that is a very TV reporter answer that you just gave with the improvement and all of that. As soon as you said that, I was like, no, this makes a lot of sense now. Okay. Okay. So I might give you one from men's and one from women's because they're both pretty similar. If I have to go for the men, it's probably going to be Tate Sage because of the fact that he's very comfortable in interviews. I've been very impressed for someone as young as he is to feel comfortable, to be able to feel confident being able to talk about it. He has a very good understanding of basketball and Big Ten basketball, which I think makes it fun too, is that he's able to have a little bit of back and forth as well, and I like that a lot. And honestly, Kylie Fairbach has been great to interview so far, at least from my perspective. She's super smart. She knows what she's talking about. You can see and hear the passion she has for this program, this game when she talks. So those are probably my two favorites if I had to guess.
It's interesting. You could say a sixth-year senior and a true freshman in Fairbach and Sage.
Different ages, but so similar in terms of how they go about their interviews, and I think that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little gridiron. Iowa football, all the Big Ten get their schedule, so Iowa fans start booking your flights or your travel arrangements. Some interesting trips here, an interesting stretch at the end, but the beginning is what we have to talk about. Iowa plays at home to Iowa State in the non-conference. Then they play against UNI, certainly not an easy game, and then that gauntlet at the University of Michigan, home to Ohio State, at the University of Washington, back to back to back, no buys in between. Let's ask you about those first 6 weeks, your take on that tough stretch for Iowa.
You're looking at the September 26th to the October 10th date in particular. I think that's where we learn a lot about the 2026 Iowa football team. Now, the hard part right now is that there's not necessarily a surefire answer on what this football program is going to look like. They had a lot of turnover on the defensive line, and there's a quarterback battle coming up this spring and summer. Iowa did not get a quarterback out of the transfer portal. They were very clear about that from the get-go, so it's going to be Hank Brown, Jeremy Hecklinski, battling it out to see who's going to be the new QB1. We've talked about this, and we can keep talking about this and run over in everyone else's time when it comes to position battles and all of that stuff. But focusing a little bit more on the schedule, I think that 3-game stretch is really going to show what this Iowa football team can do and how far they've gone since the ReliaQuest Bowl in ending that ranked win drought that had been a little bit of a burden to the program. Not necessarily a burden where it's become bothersome, but just like one of those like talking heads in the back of your head, if you know what I'm talking about. And so now that that's gone, now we can really see it. I think those first 3 home games are going to be really fun, and they're going to make things interesting. I'm very excited for Cyhawk to be at Kinnick Stadium. That's my personal bias after getting to experience it at Jack Trice last year.
Yeah. Look, I know Iowa State, I was going to be favored with the new head coach in Ames, but Jimmy Rogers seems happy with what he's gotten, especially up front along the offensive line. And you never know when UNI comes to town. We've seen a 2-block field goal game, kind of a necessary pull it out of thin air win for Iowa. But that stretch from Michigan, Ohio State, and Washington, I mean, you can't catch a break if you're an Iowa fan. You go to Michigan, you're facing Kyle Whittingham, the new coach at Michigan, the 2 longest tenured head coaches in college football, Ferentz and Whittingham, and then at home to Ohio State. And that's tough, too, because it's on October 3rd. It's not even like a late November game where Iowa plays their best football. They have to play early, and it feels like Ohio State's always great early. Then you go straight to Washington, not an easy place to play. And then you finally have the bye week. If I was really picking and just saying, oh, what's the best chance for Iowa, I would maybe switch the bye week game or the after the bye week game. So they're at Minnesota on October 24th. What if they were at Minnesota on October 10th and then at Washington after a bye week on October 24th? You still have a tough stretch there with Michigan and Ohio State, but at least you break it up a little bit, right?
Wishful thinking, alas. I know.
And
I will say this one thing about the Big Ten schedule and where the bye week is that I really like, and maybe this is just because I'm a college football fanatic, but I love the fact that Iowa gets the Big Ten West Division back for the latter half of the year. I love that they're getting the band back together. I think there are a lot of college football enthusiasts that are really excited about that too. Me personally, especially having dug into so much Big Ten history, Iowa football history over the last 6 months, that's really exciting because I love seeing some rivalries that Iowa doesn't get to play every single year kind of happen all in one shot the back half of the season.
Yeah, and just to read out those for you, after a bye, Iowa is against Minnesota, Wisconsin, Northwestern, Purdue, Illinois, and then at home on Black Friday against Nebraska. There you see it right there. Thank you very much, Mike. The old Big Ten West. I mean, the Big Ten West. It lives forever. Good and bad for Iowa, I think, because you may have 1, maybe 2 ranked opponents in that stretch. So that's not always a great thing for fan support. It's not always a great thing on the national stage for Iowa because perhaps you have national pundits saying, well, who's Iowa beaten if they're beating an unranked Wisconsin, Northwestern, and Purdue? But obviously a good thing because maybe you get 6 wins out of it. I think if you're a wishful thinker, if you're Iowa, an Iowa fan, you maybe can escape those first 6 weeks with 2 losses and then go 6-0 down the stretch. I think that's a pretty realistic expectation for Iowa.
I think it's definitely a possibility. Again, I go back to we still don't know so much about this football team with spring practices still a few months down the road from now, and that makes it difficult. I would feel pretty optimistic between a 7 and a 9 win season right now. Just looking at it on paper, pick your losses, pick your wins. 7 to 9 wins right now with the information we have currently without really seeing much on the field. That's where I'm leaning towards right now. But who knows? It's February. We could be laughing in August or even November about how wrong I sounded to you all. So that's again, I go back to the unpredictability of sports. That's what makes this fun.
Yeah. All right. Coming up next, we're talking women's wrestling on the mat. Stay with us on Iowa Live.
Welcome back. We're joined by Trey from Elite Fitness. Trey, what is the importance of strengthening and conditioning at the high school level?
So I would say there's 3 main points, the first one being injury.
Welcome back. We're joined by Trey from Elite Fitness. Trey, what is the importance of strengthening and conditioning at the high school level?
So I would say there's 3 main points, the first one being injury prevention. So we are training these kids to be strong enough and mobile enough so that they are ready to handle anything they might encounter in their sports. The second would be to improve their sport performance. So we're trying to make them stronger, faster, more explosive. So that's going to help them run faster, jump higher, jump farther, react quicker, and that's just going to improve their sport performance. And then the last one is just to help build these healthy lifelong habits. So we're teaching them how to lift with appropriate form and how to train safely.
At what age should kids begin training, and is there such a thing as training too young?
I would say that there's no such thing as training too young if it is done appropriately. So the good thing about working with any of our trainers here at Elite Fitness is that we are knowledgeable enough and have enough experience to give the kids appropriate exercises no matter what developmental stage they're in.
Well, how can people get a hold of you?
People can get a hold of us by going to our website at elitefitnessiowa.com.
All right, thanks, Catherine, and welcome back to On Iowa Live. If you missed any of our show earlier, it's on YouTube. We talked men's basketball, women's basketball, and touched on the football schedule. I'm with Madison Hricik of the Cedar Rapids Gazette, and we're moving to the mat now. Iowa women's wrestling is 10-1 on the season. For the first time, we learned the Hawkeyes might be mortal as they lost 23-21 against North Central. Clarissa Chun said her team needed to be better at finishing. So we'll get to the good stuff because there's way more good than bad that we could talk about with this team. But in general, what are your thoughts on Iowa women's wrestling first real big dual loss of their existence?
Well, I think one of the things that you have to remember is that in wrestling, in an individual sport where one performance does so much to the team aspect, you're not going to ever go through your entire wrestling career without a loss. That just doesn't happen. And so Iowa was the anomaly for the longest time. Once they started, they became the anomaly in finding ways to continue to win. And in that national dual tournament against North Central, they just weren't able to get the bonus points. Meanwhile, their opponent was doing such a great job of making things difficult. There were a lot of win by decisions, not a lot of tech falls, and then obviously the pin was ultimately the one scenario that Iowa needed to not win that duel, and it ended up being what became their first loss.
Yeah, their 207-pounder got pinned at the end, but Iowa actually led or won 6 of the 10 matches in the dual meet. So Clarissa Chun obviously has a little bit of motivation to put on the bulletin board, and that's something you cover any sport, that like a loss isn't you never want a loss, but you always want motivation, right?
Absolutely, and I think one of the things that was really impressive was Iowa's ability to bounce back. They bounced back extremely well. They were able to still go in, take the bronze in that wrestling national duels. I was super impressed to see how they were able to navigate all of that. And it is difficult managing your first loss as a program. And Clarissa Chun led the program very, very well. You could tell there was a little bit of emotion after the match was done, but she immediately was like, we have things to be proud of. We have things to work on. There's still another duel, and they're going to go out and do it. And that's what happened.
Yeah. You've seen a lot of this team this year. And like I said before, way more good than bad for the Hawkeyes. What are their biggest strengths on the mat? And obviously fans still have plenty of chances to see them on the mat.
I think, we're talking individual wrestlers. You have to mention Kennedy Blades. I mean, she's a superstar in her own right. You don't just go out and win an Olympic silver medal by accident by any means. She's done a great job being a leader for this team, not necessarily just in the sport of wrestling, although she has become an incredible leader in that realm too. But I think when you look at her ability to find ways to earn bonus points, she's done a great job. And I think one of the things that makes it entertaining to follow her in particular is how excited she is to see the growth of the sport. Another wrestler who has just shown there, Reese Larramendi, has done a great job this season at 145. I've been super impressed with her ability to compete and how well she's done throughout this season. You have a lot of wrestlers that just do so well in the moment when they need them to. And obviously that national duels loss was really difficult because it just didn't work out in that final moment. But so many individual wrestlers have shown so much improvement. So many of them are going to be in contention for individual national titles. And Iowa's going to have a chance to compete against a lot of really, really good wrestling programs this weekend at the For Her tournament in Coralville.
Yeah, that one Sunday, February 8th, an all-day event. And then after that, flip the calendar. It's late February, early March, and you're going to see the NCAA National Championships. By the way, March 6th and 7th in Coralville at Extreme Arena is where the NCAA Women's Wrestling National Championships are going to be held. That's like a watershed moment for this sport. I think you have potential superstars like Larramendi and Kennedy Blades who can turn this sport, from a bit of a niche thing to a much more popular thing that people are paying attention to. Obviously, I know you're excited for that event too.
Well, and I think one of the things that makes it even more exciting, it's the first NCAA national championship for women's wrestling too. So just the fact that it's the first is a really big deal.
And explain what that means, NCAA versus what they had before, the NWCA.
Well, so essentially this is now sanctioned by the NCAA. There is a championships department that determines this is how this works. They ratified that over the summer. They chose Iowa specifically to be the host school for this tournament. They'll have that opportunity. It's something the program has been talking about since the season began because it helps continue to grow the sport. It helps get the opportunity for young girls who are competing in high school wrestling for the first time to see what the highest level of collegiate competition can look like. And it's going to make things so interesting because the National Women's Collegiate, NWCA, how they've operated has been very similar to what's going to happen. The key component that the NCAA does that's very interesting is they do limit the number of the number of wrestlers a team can take. And for Iowa, that's going to be a really, really tough task in a couple weeks.
That's a good problem to have. I got it wrong. I missed a W somewhere. It's NCWWC. But I guess we don't have to worry about that anymore. That was last year. Now and for the future and forevermore, hopefully, the NCAA. All right, Madison Hricik, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Coming up next, we'll have Paul Runquist and then the Regina boys basketball team on Iowa Live.
Hello, testing. Hello. Paul Runquist. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Welcome back to Pickle Palace. Welcome back to On Iowa Live. I'm joined by Paul Runquist, the head coach of the Iowa City Regina boys basketball team. Off to a 15-1 start. I shouldn't say start anymore. We're kind of midway through the season, coming up on the state tournament, up to number 3 in the Iowa High School Athletic Union Association ranks. They have gotten as high as number 2. Only loss is at Solon, a team we've had here on Iowa Live before. Since then, 12 straight. Coach Runquist, what's the biggest reason for your success this year, or reasons?
Yeah, I think we've got really good. Yeah, I think we've got really good leadership, and the kids have bought in. We start practice early June, so it's basketball's a long season. It's not just beginning in November. So we've played a lot of basketball, a lot of fundamentals here in the last few months, and I think we're getting better at the right time.
By no means was this a poor team last year, but do you feel like individually and as a team you've improved? Obviously your record says you improved, but off the court or on the practice court, let's say, do you feel your team has made that next stride?
I thought we did until about an hour and a half ago and watched us practice. So we got a lot to work on, but I think the kids they understand what winning takes. A lot of them play football and had a lot of success during that season, and we started a little bit late because they had that success. But again, it's such a process. Basketball's a really long season. A lot of peaks and valleys, and I think we're getting better at the right time.
Wins coming against Alburnett was a big one on the road here. You beat Mid-Prairie. Was there a game or perhaps a moment, it could have been in practice, where you kind of thought to yourself, okay, all right, we've got something here with our guys?
It might have been that Alburnett game a few weeks ago, and we play them again tomorrow, so we're going to need to play very well. I think for us, understanding that we just need to be a little bit more efficient and get to our second and third reads offensively, and I think when we do that, we find success. But for me, it's what we do on the other end of the court and making sure that we're staying in front of our guy and guarding and rebounding. I feel like we're at our best when we're doing that.
All right. So as a coach, been at this a long time. What's the key in getting these high school guys who see dunks and three-pointers on Instagram? What's the key to getting their head up, stay on their man, and make defense the biggest priority?
Well, if they're not going to do it the right way, then we'll just have a little conditioning practice, and they don't really have a choice. So I feel like they've bought in, and we might not always be the prettiest team offensively, but I feel like we play a style that wins games in the tournament, and that's where it's most important.
You've obviously had a great offensive performance these last few weeks. You scored 80 the other day. When you're beating teams by kind of 20, 30 plus, is there something you do in practice, in games, to just make sure like your guys are locked in and day out, not taking anything for granted, not ever going on cruise control?
I think as a high school coach, that's one of the most difficult things to do, is to get your kids to realize that every game is important. You're always playing for something, and one of our goals is to try and win the conference championship. And we're in a position to do that. And if you're in a position to win your conference, that puts you oftentimes in a good position in districts. So always things to play for, and just need to remind them of those things.
All right, we'll have the rest of your team coming up next on Iowa Live.
What? Tate Wallace, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Will Litton, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Welcome back to On Iowa Live. The home team is here. The Regina boys basketball team sitting at 15-1 on the season and perhaps running away with the River Valley South Conference title. Guys, first off, can the two gentlemen on the mic, you introduce yourselves and tell me your year in school?
I'm Tate Wallace, and I'm a junior.
I'm Will Litton, I'm a junior.
All right, Tate and Will. Guys, ask your coach this question. I'm curious what both of you think the biggest factor or factors in your success this season.
I think our defense has been the biggest factor for us. Our defense leads to our offense, and then we play well on defense. I think our offensive possessions become better.
I think that getting the ball inside has been a big success for us, and then leads to open shots on the outside.
So it starts with like physical play inside in the paint, not hucking up shots.
Mm-hmm.
You guys made state, 2 years ago, didn't get there last year, but you're in a position to get there. Is state a goal for you guys, and how often do you talk about those goals? Is that a thing you mentioned in June? Is that a thing you mentioned once and maybe not again?
Yeah, we mentioned it a little bit, but I mean, the main focus right now is winning the conference and then winning the next game. But I think overall, state's a big goal for us, and I think winning conference is a good step to, achieve that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a big goal for us, but most importantly, the next game is the most important.
Makes sense. You guys, I know you are, Tate. A lot of success on the football field for y'all. Can you just quickly raise your hand? Any football players besides Tate on the 1, 2, 3, 4? Just question about the success you have on the football field. Obviously, you might be a little late to those conditioning workouts on the court, but does football kind of translate to the basketball court, and how?
Yeah, I think practice is just working hard, your work ethic, throughout football, and then getting used to winning. You win in football, and then you're expected to win in basketball, and you have a great group of athletes around you. So, I mean, it's just, the work ethic that's probably the biggest part for us.
Yeah. Will, you've had wins this year, a lot of standout moments. Do any one or two standout moments, I can't think of a better word, stand out to you and your team?
Not really. I think every single win is very important.
Every what is very important?
Yeah.
Every win is very important. That makes sense. So I guess that answers my question. But when a lot of times you're beating teams by 20 or 30, what keeps you guys locked in, making sure this next play is the most important play, this next quarter is the most important quarter?
Yeah, I think still focusing on our defense, throughout the games. You can get up. A lot of teams, they shoot quick shots. So, I mean, no team is ever out of it when you play them, and especially you hit the third and fourth quarter, teams are going to start firing up shots, and usually sometimes they go in against us. So, I mean, you always have to be ready 4 quarters a game.
Obviously, you guys were happy to beat Alburnett, but in the 2 matchups, you guys have beat them by a combined 9 points. Obviously, none of you were there for that first matchup, but it just shows that nothing is ever easy. So you have the Pirates tomorrow. What are your biggest keys? Don't give away the scouting report, obviously, but what are your biggest keys to getting a win tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, they're a great team. They drive hard. They have quick players, good athletes, and I think just the biggest thing for us is, the game plan going into the game and then playing good defense as well and then forcing good shots.
Yeah, I agree with Tate. I think we just got to play really good defense and it'll lead to our offense.
Yeah. Coach, you can answer this too if you want. You talked about them coming in June. You guys lost in the regional or the sub-state semis last year. When you came back in the summer, you started those conditioning drills. Were you thinking about that loss? Like, what were some of those early days like? And on the flip side, could you then envision a future in which you were sitting with just one loss here on this stage and maybe a favorite to win your conference?
Well, I mean, you'd always want to. Three of our players this year actually played in that state tournament. Tate was a freshman, Will was a freshman, and then we've got another senior this year, so he was a sophomore. So they've played in a lot of big games, but yeah, I mean, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, there's opportunities here, but you still have to put the work in, and hope people don't get hurt or sick at the wrong time.
Yeah. Tate, Drew, Wills, I'm sorry. You guys are close. It's not just on the court. Is there anything you guys do off the court for fun? Bowling, movies, video games? What do you guys do for team bonding? Because it's important,
Yeah, I think team bonding, me and Will have a good bond because, he's a pitcher, I'm a catcher, and then defensive ends and football. But I think overall team bonding for basketball, we've done a great job. I think we spent a good amount of time off the court with each other, and it's been great. Anything
you guys like to do, Will?
Yeah, I mean, we both lift together like every single morning. And
classic Regina answer. What do you guys like to do? Oh, we like to lift. We like to lift weights. Classic. All right. Maybe if you guys come back here a few weeks with the state championship trophy, we can have it sitting right here in front of the OnIowa live stage. What's the biggest key in getting there?
Yeah, I think winning just the next game. The next game is the most important game for us, and then never getting our eyes too big, and then just focusing on our defense and take it one game at a time.
Sorry, go ahead, Will.
Yeah, it's definitely just improving on defensively every single game and just getting better.
Same question for you, Coach Rundquist.
We got a guard. Yeah,
got a guard. Got to play some defense.
Yeah, got a guard.
All right. Regina boys basketball, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you all for joining me here at Pickle Palace. Thanks to my executive producer, Aaron Rudy, and director, Mike Burton. We will see you next week right here, same time, same place on Iowa Live.